Well, here we are. We're at the table, literally this table, but it's not the full podcast at the table, which you'll come back for hopefully down the road. But we thought, at the tail end of your visit, you've been here for 48 hours, just came from Reno. Before you go camp out the night near the airport to fly back home tomorrow, just thought it'd be great to get some time together. So we got Dan Moore, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Volunteer Engagement, 21 years with Operation Blessing. We first met right as the greatest disaster in LA history started to unfold, and we'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah.
And we've got Brennan O'Leary about to get married in October. Yes. Congratulations in advance. Big deal. Yeah. 12 years with Operation Blessing.
My first love, it feels like.
I love it. That's the best. That's so good. And you're the director of the Emergency Operation Center, which is like the war room. I mean, I picture it's like Mission Impossible, like, Ving Rhames, the actor, he's the guy who's like there. Mm-hmm. What was his name in Mission Impossible? Do you know that well?
Just watched the whole series. Luther.
Luther. I feel like you're like the Luther. You're like, is that kind of how it is?
I've got the most TV screens of any office.
How many do you have?
I've got 4 in one room.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're Luther. Okay. I love it. That's so great.
Congratulations, Luther.
Yeah.
So we first met and, how crazy it took the greatest disaster in LA history to start a relationship. But I love the word start because this relationship has had a number of chapters since January of 2025. We're currently in May 2026, and we're talking in these couple days about what that relationship looks like moving forward. It's pretty exciting, but why don't we just go back in time first? You've been, like I said, with Operation Blessing for 21 years. And, I think it's great as we invite people into this conversation. Disaster takes a lot of forms. And disaster can be a hurricane or disaster can be a diagnosis. Mm-hmm. And it feels like there's a common thread in how God is a God who moves towards the suffering. God is a God who moves towards the powerless. And I want to ask both of you this question. What have you learned about disaster relief? Not so much the logistics only, but what have you learned about God's character that shapes how you, even in a personal way, approach someone who's experienced loss? Because this is a commonality among everyone who's listening, whether they or someone they know either is in the middle of or is going to experience loss down the road. But in all your decades of experience, what have you learned about God's character that maybe we can learn from, and how we don't run away from people, but move towards people who are suffering?
I would say being present. Not only, I think of homeowners, right? Like there's so much transpiring, like you were talking logistics and things, and you have a lot of things happening in a disaster, but being able to, when you meet a homeowner or somebody that's impacted, being present for that homeowner, because that's a lot of times the only thing that they have is their story. And that's the same thing the Lord wants with us, right? Is to be present with him. And I always been amazed at the ability when I started with Operation Blessing after Hurricane Katrina, the logistic capability and different components that we're able to provide to communities when disaster strikes, resources and supplies, so that people can begin to slowly get back on their feet. But I begin to realize, like, all the knowledge is great, but people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm. So all that knowledge is great, but being there to care for them and to love them and to be present and then allow the Holy Spirit to use you, I think transcends all the other stuff. Like, that's all great, but being present, and it could be just a moment or it could be, a lot longer. So I would say for me, that was probably one of the biggest things, because all the knowledge is great, but sometimes God's just saying, can you just allow me to use you how I see, as God put something right in front of you. Mm.
That's the movement of Jesus, right? The incarnation, God moving towards us from heaven to earth. What about you, in your years?
Mine is the firmament of divine appointment and just showing up, right? That just showing up can be that divine appointment. I can remember I was in Morocco with Diego, who you've met, our senior director, and we were doing a distribution. Morocco, mind you, is a Muslim country. It's illegal to bring a Arabic Bible into the country. So we're working with the underground church, doing distributions in communities. And I had a man come up to me while we were doing a food distribution. And he spoke to me in French. He said, J'ai un cadeau pour toi, pour vous. I have a gift for you. And it's holding something in his jacket. And so I don't know what to expect. I'm like looking around for an interpreter in case I need one. And he comes and he hands me a Quran.
Wow.
And I recognized in that moment that he saw the divine in us being there. In this moment where they'd suffered a terrible earthquake, many fatalities, but that us showing up for them was a divine appointment. And his gift to me of his Quran, it was a personal Quran. I could tell it had bookmarks and all of that in there, that he recognized the divine in us being there. And that God is in timing, and God is in consistency, and God is in being present to people when they need it and bringing them what they need.
Gosh, that reminds me of in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul goes to the Areopagus in Athens, and there's this place, the Areopagus, where they're debating, and there's all these idols to the various gods, and there's an altar to an unknown God. And it says, and Paul, searched throughout the city and studied the city, and he went with curiosity. He says, men of Athens, I see how very religious you are. I see these things. And even, there's this altar here to an unknown God. Well, I'm here to tell you about that unknown God. Even some of your poets. And he quotes a pagan poem to Zeus. I don't know if you know that, but there's a poem written about Zeus in the book called the Bible, right? This is not Greek mythology only, but he quotes it to connect that partial understanding. In him we move and breathe and have our being. Wow. Even some of the other poets have said we are his offspring about Zeus, and he points it to Yahweh, the maker of heaven and earth. And that posture of recognizing the divine, they call that divine Allah. And and we know the true maker of heaven and earth has the name Yahweh. That's right. Many names, right? Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Rapha, Elohim, Jesus, right? Which is a very different posture to approach than, I don't want to touch that, as if that book will somehow stain you. It's like the posture of Jesus flows to those with disease rather than the fear of disease flowing to him. I love that.
It's okay.
Words matter so much, right?
Yeah.
So what words or questions or statements maybe don't help in the moment to be present and turn it into either a transaction or I just want to fix it? Because I think there's some vocabulary that we've learned from people that we think is helpful, and we're searching for language and our heart is there, but sometimes helping can hurt when we don't realize, So what are some things that you've learned, even as people enter moments of someone going through suffering? What have you found this doesn't help so much?
Yeah.
And on the other side, what are some helpful questions, statements? Silence is huge too. So how would you look at both sides of that coin?
Gosh, I can think of also a lot of listening and action, right? So one of our latest responses is in Jamaica in the West Indies, which is a special place to me. It's a place I lived for 2 years doing volunteer and missionary work. And so it was my second or third day in this new role in global disaster response for OB that the Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica. And so it was a huge convergence for me of this place that shaped me deeply, and also being in this new role and this new job that made it a very emotional experience for me. But it also allowed me to look at navigating that culture in a new way with my team members. And one thing Jamaicans will tell you is they love a big portion. There are no McDonald's on Jamaica. Now, McDonald's will tell you it's because their supply chain couldn't work on the island of Jamaica. Jamaicans will tell you, nah, their patties is maga. They can't, they're too thin. They want a thicker beef. And so our chefs are down there. We have a great group of chefs, like trained, they can crank out meals that we can get up to 5,000 a day if we're really cooking, no pun intended, right? But they got in trouble day 2 in Jamaica because the portions they were giving were too small, right? And
they let you know that they were too small very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, because you can get so fixated on the task. And they're probably thinking, our chefs are like, I got a fixed budget and I got to get this many meals. So you're getting 1 scoop of potato salad, right? But you can't let your goals, objectives, your target, what you think your mission is, be contrary to the culture and needs that those people have and have defined for themselves.
Good.
Right?
Wow.
Why get to 5,000 meals if you're going to have everyone complaining, right? You have to
Fascinating.
be receptive to what people want and what they need and serve them at their level by their standards, not ours.
Gosh, that's massive, especially in big cities in the U.S. And I'll contextualize it for Los Angeles. Many of our listeners right now are in L.A., so we don't have to travel to Jamaica to meet Jamaicans because they're right down the street from many of our listeners. We have people from all over the globe who have called LA their home. I mean, it is this massive hub of globalization, whether that's the Iranian community, the Persian community, the Turkish community, the Chinese, and even the subsets within that, different tribal groups and nation states. We have such a global village here in LA that there is no one size fits all, even in our own city, in our workplaces, in our schools, in our neighborhoods. So what a great reminder of that contextual cultural awareness. That's beautiful. What about you?
I would say, we mobilize thousands of volunteers every year, right? And obviously you have a lot of different personalities. So maybe they're not comfortable, a volunteer talking with the homeowner or even maybe praying if they need to, if God leads them to. But I always like to say, Brendan touched on it. Love on the homeowner. Just let them know that you're present, you're there. Listen, accept. You don't have to agree, like you were just talking about Allah and all that, right? But we can love, listen, accept, and then just pray, right? And invite God into the situation. I think so many times we can feel pressure to do something that's not our job to do. And so that's why I think that's so important is putting our life in his hands, and he becomes that scalpel. And that scalpel can be cutting sheetrock, and pulling that out for a homeowner that's had, 6 feet of water in their home. And as we have a team come in from Michigan to a home that's been in LA, in Los Angeles, not Los Angeles, but Louisiana, LA. I always say Louisiana. And so to me, that's the power of love, listen, accept, and pray. I also love to say, because sometimes you have people that have that desire, but they're like, what do I say? Like, I'm walking up, I don't know this person. We got an address, we have the tools to come and serve. And so we really try to empower them, to volunteers and staff, to just say, how are you holding up? Instead of how are you doing? I've done
subtle,
it.
those two difference.
I've done it where they're like, how do you think I'm doing? And so you really begin to change the way that the conversation goes. And then you can really just allow the Lord to do what he does best. And we just organically see these volunteers just have such a wonderful experience of loving on and helping a homeowner walk through some of their darkest and most tragic.
So those 4 again, say them one more time, because we can apply this to our roommate who just lost their job.
Absolutely.
To an ailing parent who just found out that their spouse has got terminal cancer. So say the 4 again.
Love, listen, accept what they have to say. Doesn't mean you agree, and then pray. Just invite God into this conversation.
That reminds me, some people say, and I can see why there's a lot of validity to this, that not everyone has the personality or the posture, the skill set to be on the field doing frontline disaster relief, right? And yet we're all called to be compassionate especially as followers of Jesus. And even if somebody hasn't yet said yes to Jesus, there is this global value of compassion that transcends creed or, right?
Yes.
So, knowing that compassion is needed every day of our lives, whether we're in line at the grocery store, or in a workplace scenario, or compassion to yourself, to start there. What are some things that you have experienced in your life, or ways in which you've increased your capacity for compassion? Have you noticed that there's been people who have helped you increase your capacity? Is it your relationship with God that increases your capacity? Are there certain things that, while there's personalities that maybe are more geared towards it, the frontline work? So maybe not everybody can be frontliners. I really believe we're all called to be compassionate, but not everybody has a compassionate personality to begin with. Sure. So there's, I think, opportunities to grow in compassion. If you were to invite a fourth person to this table, I'll ask it this way, who's like, I want to be compassionate, but I really struggle. Can you maybe from your own personal life share, hey, here are things that have helped me grow in compassion?
I think for me, it's been beautiful to continue to grow in a Christian nonprofit and to have deep relationships that I've forged within disasters. I'm thinking especially of like our senior director, Diego, who you've met, who's been out here in LA. Nothing brings you closer to someone than a disaster, but like being able to leave that and having these values that you agree upon, that you can reflect and share upon. A huge term that gets thrown around in our industry a lot is compassion fatigue. And so you have to not just build more capacity for compassion, but find ways to recharge your compassion. And I think having people to talk to about it, I think being able to talk about it is important. And so having that within our team has always been important to me, especially when we were smaller and tight. I can remember being in Colombia and we were dealing with Venezuelan refugees, and I was working with, he's now one of our senior deployment managers, Jorge, and just being able to admit to each other that we had to cry. Like, because you're so focused on doing, like whether it's cooking meals or running medical missions, like you're so focused on doing that you sometimes feel a little numb. Like, you know why you're there and you know why you're doing that, but to be around people who you can acknowledge how it's making you feel, but also for me to be close to people who can redirect me to my God and my Savior, who are, for me, that source of compassion, that I'm seeking them and seeking that imago Dei in the people that I'm serving, that image and likeness of Christ is in each of them. And that's the reason why it makes me sad, but it's also the reason why I want to keep going. So having that shared language around people that you're serving with is, I think, so important. Yeah,
from a biblical framework that every person, regardless of whether they even believe God exists or not, is someone made in the image of God, worthy to be served, to be loved, is revolutionary. Yes. It's not just, the people who are like me or the people who believe the same things. No, it's all of humanity. God is made and precious before God.
It's a brother and sisterhood, our disaster response team, because I think of one of our staff members in Asheville. I mean, she was there when the flooding took place, and we couldn't get in touch with her for a number of days. And here she is, typically flying into an area to respond, and now it's her hometown, it's her family, it's her friends. And being able to, I wasn't there all the time, but just being able to walk a little bit and see how we could be there, and we start our day with a short devotion and pray for each other and pray for the day. I mean, it really is that relationship with God that grounds you. I think back to even in my early years with Katrina. I mean, I came to New Orleans to work 2 months, and 2 months turned into 2 years in 2 months. And then I moved to Virginia Beach at our world headquarters in '08. And so I remember times though in New Orleans in very early days, like I was just like, God, I don't know how much more I can take. Like I'm just crying, like, what do I do? Because a million people have been impacted and it's like constant. And so being able to lean into the Lord, but then also, as Brendan was saying, that importance of compassion fatigue and understanding how you can release those tension points so that you can get debrief and can understand how you can best serve yourself as you serve others, because Jesus didn't come to be served, but to serve. And so I learned so much about myself. And so I really try to make sure that I can pass that along to others that have that same passion, maybe in different ways, so that they can be all that God's called them to be, because he's called us to serve and to love people at their point of need, but then also to be ones that can cry and hug each other and say, hey, we're in this together. And so that's the beautiful thing about our global disaster response team. I mean, we're family. We can at times see the best, but also the worst, and we're there for each other. That's where we pick each other up and we walk together.
An interesting experience that I've had. So I'm a third generation Angelino and been in LA my whole life. And, there's been disasters that have hit here, but nothing to this scale as what happened last year. And very quickly receiving so much support from around the U.S. with Operation Blessing, really leading the charge. And even some in your leadership who said, gosh, this is the beginning of a relationship, and it's this disaster that brought us together to prepare us for the next one, has also reframed my view on global disasters. And it had this kind of humbling realization for me of like, whenever I see in the news a disaster hits, I pray, but very quickly my heart moves quickly past it to here and now. And it was very odd for me to be in LA experiencing such engagement from those outside of LA. Again, Operation Blessing, world headquarters are in Virginia Beach, though you have a global reach, Sure. And so it humbled me and inspired me. And I had to say, okay, God, give me that kind of a heart so that I can be like those who came to our aid and support and love, so that I can do more than just quickly pray and then move on when there's disasters. And I've learned a posture that I think is more closer to the heart of God than it was prior to this disaster. And so as the senior pastor of Bel Air Church, I long for us to be a church that catches that vision, that we're more than just praying and then moving on to our stuff, but that we would be ready and available, whether that disaster is, again, here in Los Angeles or, in the immediate vicinity. And how odd it is to say that it took a disaster to learn that. And, we were talking earlier about Psalm 23.
Yes.
And something I've discovered recently about how this famous psalm, who I've, read many times over the years and taught on, I didn't really catch until recently when I was reading through it, that the pronoun that's used to describe God shifts about a third of the way through the psalm. And it begins with some nice imagery. He makes me lie down beside, quiet waters, leads me beside quiet waters and stills my soul. And it's all he, third person pronoun about God, which third person pronouns are a little bit removed. I can say he about somebody on the other side of the planet, I can say he about someone who I'm not yet in a relationship. And this is the mind-blowing catch. All of a sudden, the pronoun shifts away from he, and it never uses he again through the rest of the psalm. Yeah. And it's at the point where it says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, which is sorrow, heartache, disaster, suffering, battles. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And it goes from he to you, and the personal nature of God that is experienced when we're in our darkest valleys reframes disaster for me.
Wow.
And then it's like, okay, even more so like how it's framed it for me. Gosh, when there's disaster that strikes, God wants to go from he to you for every single person in that disaster. So how can I join God in that, So what's your hope for people catching a vision for partnering together? Like as an organization, you don't claim to say, hey, we've got all the answers, we don't need any help, and you do it through the local church. But if you could just speak about hope and people's heart posture, what's your hope for more and more people saying, hey, we want to be part of what God's doing, especially in the midst of disasters? How would you answer that?
Yeah. Well, we want to help more people, so we need more volunteers. We need more churches to come on board so that we can be the hands and feet of Christ through your local church. And either sending a team to when we deploy to a disaster, or being that hub, that church host, so that we can love a city well alongside of a local church, because that local church and that local church pastor and community knows the needs of their community better than we do. So you can go to our website and learn more about how you can volunteer and learn about how you can partner as a church or as a volunteer to serve and be a part of helping us reach our mission of bringing help and hope to a hurting world.
Love that combo. Well, we've been together for 48 hours and, quickly there's a little bit of this.
Yes.
You're not checking box scores for the latest, in the NBA playoffs. You're not, getting distracted by what's going on social media. Right. You are actively responding to a brand new disaster. And as you said earlier, that disaster often hits in places you've never heard of and on nights and weekends. Right?
Yep.
So why don't you share what's the latest that is on your radar from last night?
Sure. There was a set of tornadoes that went through Mississippi. What was the town again, Dan?
Purvey,
Mississippi. Again,
never heard of Purvey, Mississippi.
No, never heard of. And it was fun for my team to coordinating travel to be like, well, which airport is closest to Purvey for us to get our team on the ground? So we're sending deployment managers, a team of 5 people.
Yeah. They're
on the road as we speak, as we're recording this, heading to that disaster zone, connecting with churches that Dan's reached out to, or churches that church is connected us to, really just trying to get a sense of where people are, where the suffering is, where they're hurting, and what help and hope we can bring to them.
That's amazing. So
14 tornadoes. And so you have communities, more rural communities, outside of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So these are not large cities. These are small communities with people that are hurting. And even today we were talking to our director of in our EOC while we're out here that helps with our deployments and sending staff into the field. And she was telling me how this church connected us to that anchor in that community. And she got 14 or 15 businesses and calls Hannah, our director, and says, hey, I need you to get on this phone call right now. I have about 15 businesses and I need you to give them your elevator pitch. So she gets on and just shares about our heart, what I just said about bringing help and hope. We're here to serve. And as our team is en route on the way, and one lady just starts crying. And it's just like, this is just such amazing. And so God's just already orchestrating things before he's so spans time and all that. And so it's been already amazing before we even get there. We know he's working, but it's neat to see, as we were talking earlier, God's in the details. Mm-hmm. And so even coming to Bel Air Church when the wildfires hit, our senior director, Diego, was on a plane coming back from Japan, and he has a layover in LA. And he can't land, but he's talking to us about how we can get on the ground here and serve. And then I get an email from our president saying, you need to call Pastor Drew. And I call Pastor Drew, and it was just amazing how you shared how you grew up in Altadena and how God just began to open up the doors for us to come and serve together. But it wasn't just about Operation Blessing or Bel Air. It was about the people and about honoring and glorifying God. And so he gets all the glory, but that's how we knew, okay, Lord, there must be more than just this disaster. And that's why we're here, is how can we serve this West Coast region for Christ and impact more lives? That's what it's all about. And if it's through a disaster, we don't want it to happen, but if we can stand together with the body of Christ and people that are moved with compassion, they may not have faith in Christ yet, but they have a heart to serve. Let's get together, lock arms, and love on a community through the local church and give God all the glory.
Love that. Well, beautiful things happen in the context of relationship, and it's been so beautiful to continue to deepen this relationship. These 2 days earlier in the, fall, we flew out, John Woolner and I, spent some time in Virginia Beach, which was so amazing. So we want to continue this relationship. Yes. But for people to either go to Operation Blessing's website, we'll put that in the little show notes, but you just want to say the full?
Yeah. ob.org.
So easy.
Yes.
ob.org.
Yes.
And then for our website, belair.org/rebuild sends people to all the things that we're doing here in the city. So right now we're helping food distribution for 1,200 people and primarily focusing in Altadena with Crystal Lopez, who's amazing. We out here, it's just amazing. And you helped make that box truck a reality that people fill up on Sundays, and we got 6 drivers, and it's all over the place.
And thank you, Bel Air Church community. I know we so appreciate you opening your doors, obviously you, Pastor Drew, but your whole church and just allowing us to come, and you guys have felt like family. So we just want you to know how much we love and appreciate this opportunity to serve your community.
So great. Well, we don't want there to be disaster, but God is not fazed when disaster hits. And we get to join God in that great work. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you for having us here.
Oh, it's a joy. Thank you for the work you do. Send our love on behalf of Bel Air Church to the whole OB family. Mm-hmm. And it's a global family, which is really beautiful, but especially those at headquarters, Until next time, we'll see you soon.